But it's really interesting now to look at IR, kind of that timeline of being able to go back and look at, what was happening 6 months ago. Having that data to be able to look at that seems really, really critical. Be able to understand, okay, you weren't our customer back then, but I can now start to look back and say what was happening. What sort of dark web traffic was coming in out of your network at the time. Who was talking about you. What creds or steal logs were up for sale at the time. How do they make that initial breach? And having that sort of data set, I always think is really, really powerful for certainly for an IR point of view to try to answer that. And I remember being questioned all the time by customers: how did it start? How did it start? How do we learn from this? Being able to go back to them and go, well, look, this is where we think it started from. This is how we have evidence that this is the original breach source, or your email got compromised here. We can start to push that out to them and say, look, this is what we can show. So I think it's been really, really interesting looking at that kind of dark web data from an IR point of view. And you're right, then going forwards is, once we've cleared up after an incident, is, the work's been done. And I always call it mopping up, which I think is a little bit harsh, but it kind of feels like that after incidents. There's been a breach, we've cleared up to confirm that there's still nothing compromised within the network. I mean, there's only so much you can do with EDR. It won't go out to everything, but having that view that nothing left is, talking back to CNC servers back on the dark web, or, we're not seeing that traffic coming back out. That's a great kind of last tick box that this is okay. Now we understand, we're clear, right? Now let's look at things going forward.
And I'd say it's moving. It has to move toward being part of your detection program, right? It has to be part of that. And I remember being involved in an incident, not dark web, but how this company found out because of a tweet.
Right.
Yeah, it was a tweet, and then they realized, oh, and then they started investigating. They realized, oh, actually, we do have an issue, right? Serious. This was during, and it's not in the UK. The people in the UK, because elections are coming up, but it was during election time in a country, right? And this company was involved in that. So yeah, so they had an operational issue. There was a tweet by a user, and then actually realized, oh, we do have an incident, right? Um, so from the detection perspective, it has to be part of the toolkit. Okay, it has to be part of the toolkit. Of course, it evolves. It goes back to differentiating between, okay, what's managed detection and response, but what are we is just endpoint detection and response? Are we looking at APIs? Are we looking at what are the data sets that we're using to detect, right? Um, Open source, dark web, absolutely, absolutely. I'm not going to say everybody go, and yeah, it depends on where you are, your journey. Yeah,
I'll say that.
Yeah, I leave that to you. I leave that to you.
Brilliant. So you started to touch on a couple of a couple of little war stories you have there, and I know a lot of people are always really interested to hear kind of some really great stories from instances that you've been involved with. I know that there's been a few that have been published that the NCC have gone through and published out on their website. And I think there'll be links at the end of this to those particular cases or into the hub, which Alex talked about earlier. But I was wondering if you could give us a couple examples of some of the instances you've been involved with, and maybe some of the work your team's done on those.
Well, keeping it, I'd rather talk about a Frankenstein, so nobody feels, that we're pointing to a specific case. So a bit of a Frankenstein. So obviously, I talked about, the wide range of use cases from ransomware, double extortion, APT, fantastic team that's been involved in very interesting cases around that. If you look at it from that perspective, and where the type of services that Searchlight offers, really it comes down to that the data breach, that data being compromised, whether it's on standalone on its own or together as part of a ransomware. Um, if you look at that, it varies from one country to another. Obviously, threat actors don't have um, they're not limited by, well, we talked already about time zones or schedules or risk register. They don't care where you are. And some of it is just random attacks. Some are tailored attacks. A lot of them are random attacks, right? Um, I've been, I remember one where actually turns out we believe with high level certainty that there were two different threat actors trying to do more or less the same, but there were two distinct threat actors at the same time. Kind of a funny one. I never seen that one before or after. Hopefully we were not wrong, but that is a clear indicator that there were two different things happening at the same time, right? Um, the from the weaknesses that we see, it's a mixed bag. I would say the flavor of the month for the last few months, VPN.
Yeah.
That's you know, which is counterintuitive, right? VPN, virtual private network, should be all about security, but actually, if it's fully deployed, fully configured, fully maintained, then it's just an open door for somebody else, right? Uh, Before that, it was remote access, desktop protocols, that things were up um, and published and open out there, and people could just access it. Um, a lot of poor account management as well that we come across. So it's really a combination. Fortunately, the thing is that some basic hygiene is still needed. I know it's a
Yeah.
big exercise for a lot of companies because it's just a recurrent. It's every day you have to keep up. You have to keep up. You have to keep up. And yeah, there's for any medium-sized, large-sized organization, that's a difficult one. And the small ones, I don't have the budget, right? So it's
Yeah.
a combination of, right? I can wow you with specific cases, but it's seriously, Andy. I don't. It's so much stuff that we see. It's so much stuff that we see. The uh, How that works and how we work with the client. It comes down to the people. Understanding the situation, going through. If you're talking to the detection team, yeah, doing some basic questions around, just to really clear out whether this is a false positive or not, right? Um, I don't know. If I answer your question, I feel like I am,
I
but
think
I'm,
so.
I'm not
Yeah, I
at the
think
same
so.
time.
Yeah. I mean,
For
one of the
everybody
things
that
with
thought this is scripted, it wasn't scripted. So